The cream always rises to the top. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between. We are the Chaps Chat Cats, a part of the Hoops Crew Media Network. My name is Jake, and I'm joined temporarily by only one chap. Well, I'm joined permanently by this chap. We're going to be momentarily joined by someone else, we hope. Mr. Johnny Larkin, how are you?
I am well. Can't complain. It's been a pretty good week in some aspects and not so great in other aspects, and it's been bloody hot today. That's one of the bad aspects. It got hot today. How about yourself?
Don't spend any time on it, because in the meantime, every 3 months, a person is torn to pieces by a crocodile in North Queensland.
Yeah, at least we got lovely can of hops to drink.
Well done. You were going to give a bit of free advertising there, and you
I nearly did. I was like, no.
in time.
If people sort of label quickly, then they'll know what I'm drinking, but I won't give it away. It's a hops-based drink.
No free advertising on this show. No, thank you. Not unless
definitely not.
I don't know if you watched any of the live draft special between me and Ben, but we really pitched hard for a Dude Wipes sponsorship. The Hoops Crew and Dude Wipes. We felt like that was, maybe a goer for 2026. Dude Wipes. We do have a sponsor, John, for the show, of course,
and we
have the amazing,
absolutely sensational.
It is the amazing people, of course, at Cyril Cook Florist. You can phone them on 035 222 2244 if you want to go and visit them on location. Shop 12, 11 Leather Street in Breakwater, or go on over www.cyrilcookflorist.com.au. Put the voucher code GOCATS in the voucher field at checkout and get 20% off your next purchase. Now, Johnny, we're coming up to Christmas party season, work breakup season. Great opportunity. Get some flowers. Johnny, working in hospitality, knows all too well. So maybe if you've got a friend who's a chef who might, a bunch of flowers would brighten up their day, go knock 20% off it at Cyril Cook Florist, our immaculate sponsors. On the show tonight, Johnny, I foreshadowed it. I said the cream rises to the top, and that is indeed how it went down in the AFLW week 3 of the finals there, the prelim finals between the Kangaroos and Demons and the Lions and the Blues. We're going to recap all of that here on the public show. Then we'll go over to Patreon. There'll be a bit of news talk. We'll preview the AFLW grand final if we get time with Sambo. And maybe if it's just you and I, we can do it too. But recap our thoughts on the latest Predator film, Predator Badlands, which we all went and watched. But Johnny
and Chainsaw Man,
we want to actually Chainsaw Man. Yeah, you and Sambo went and saw Chainsaw Man and spoke extremely highly of it. Indeed. I haven't watched a lick of Chainsaw Man. So we might talk about that for all the anime fans out there. But we're going to start the show here, Johnny, with some news talk. 10 minutes off the top. Dan Lowther leaves the Cats. And we want to make at least a big part of the public part of the show here, something Cats focused for all our Cats fans here on the Hoops Crew. And Dan Lowther, this was announced about 3 days ago. 3 days ago, 21st of November. Dan Lowther informed the club he will step down from his role to explore other opportunities. He has been at the Cats since June of 2021. They played finals in 2022 and 2023, which of course included that heartbreaker of a prelim final against Brisbane in 2023. Obviously, Dan Lowther has been involved at the club in a number of different roles over the past sort of 3 decades. He expressed his thanks for the opportunity to lead the W program, saying it had been a privilege to coach and develop such dedicated and driven young athletes throughout my time at the Cats, as well as work and learn alongside some of the best minds mains in football. The Cats did their part. They thanked him for his significant contribution to the AFLW program over the last 5 seasons. And Johnny, that's where I'm sort of going to handball it over to you here. We talked Dan Lowther at the end of Geelong's AFLW season. We expressed, were Geelong where they needed to be in terms of the head coach position, the coaching staff position? Would they make changes? Would Dan Lowther stay another year? Was it time for a change? I think the general consensus from us at the time was that he would probably end up here for another year, but that's not the case. The time has come for change. He did make a significant impact at the Cats in his time here.
He did.
What are your thoughts on his time at the Cats and now, your thoughts on him leaving?
Yeah, obviously, you'd say it's been probably a bit more of a success than a failure in his part. He's brought some good players in, some good coaches in. He got us to a prelim, almost to a grand final, and he's developed a fairly competitive, tight-knit group. And I think it's similar to what Paul Hood did when he took charge of the AFLW side first up as the first head coach. He got them to a certain point, and then he got them there, handballed on to Dan Lowther, who then was able to go to the next level. And I think Dan Lowther's now done what he can do with this group. And I think it's not surprising at all that he has moved on or been moved on by the Cats. It was a, disappointing end to the year, and last 2 seasons have been not what the Cats, us fans, and obviously the team would expect to happen. So it does mirror his time at the Cats in a bit of dirty, crappy water, but I still think what he was able to achieve with the Cats still needs to be acknowledged. And he did a fantastic job. As I said, he got us almost into a grand final. I think it was 5 points from a grand final in one of the most frustrating, rage-inducing games I have ever watched. I've never been more pissed off for a game than that game. What he's done, what he's got this group to, you can tell he knows how to bring people together because the team look really well gelled. They look like they enjoy being in this team together. They enjoy playing together. It's just that next step of how do we develop them to be the next step up as players. And I think that's where the next coach coming in can get them to. But, Dan, as I said, he's molded this group into a tight-knit team and one that you can really see, really enjoy playing together and really want to achieve success together. So, yeah, he's done an extremely good job. Really, really glad that he was the coach. Like, I'm not going to say he did a terrible job or that he needed to be sacked, he needed to go. But, yeah, I'm glad of what he achieved at the Cats. Glad he was the Cats coach for the time, and I hope he finds success in his next adventure. And go Cats, I guess. Good on him. Well done, Dan. Thanks, Dan. And on to the new coach.
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up perfectly, Johnny. And it's a bit like, with Meg Mack's retirement, where, if you just took the slice of the last 2 seasons, you'd go, sort of disappointing end. And it's true that there is some disappointment to this, but both of them key figures as coach and captain in taking Geelong from being, we said it before, this is the side we started the podcast covering in 2021. That was a brutal watch in the 2021 season, but, fair play to got, people like Paul Hood and those initial few lists of Cats players. They're doing something that they'd never done for the first time, starting a professional women's club in Geelong. And you're right, that continuity. Paul Hood took it to a certain point, got it off the ground. Dan Lowther instantly, now he came in and made big change. It was night and day how Geelong were getting beaten in 2021 to how they sort of, improved defensively in 2022. They developed into a more attacking side across the next couple of seasons, and it all sort of peaked with that 2023 prelim final run. It was 4 points, Johnny, and 5 minutes into that final term, Geelong were ahead. Geelong were ahead by 2 points when Aisling Maloney goaled at the 5-minute 13-second mark. Shannon Campbell goaled about 6 minutes later to put the Lions in front. And, you know, there was a good 10 minutes of play thereafter where Geelong had their chances. The ball was going inside 50, I believe, from memory for Geelong as the siren sounded. It was brutal. But I remember you said one of the most frustrating nights of watching Cats footy. I just remember Twitter being alight with it. And I remember on that night thinking like, wow, like Lowther and McDonald and, you know, Aisling Maloney and Prasparkas and Morrison and all these people, like they've really put Geelong's AFLW program on the map. But we're going to have to get back to that peak, Johnny, because it hasn't been to that height again. Even the interest from fans hasn't been to that height again. That really was the high watermark so far of Geelong's AFLW history. Was a night where all of Cats Twitter were up in arms about umpiring and the result and all this sort of stuff. So I think
you need that
On
success
it that night. Yeah. You got to build on it. And unfortunately, the next 2 seasons haven't happened. And there's been other stuff that's been going on in terms of injuries and players leaving. But that dovetails us, Johnny, into just a little bit of stuff here. And that is that Mick Stanier, the coach of the Melbourne Demons, walks from the club. He quit the club following the prelim final loss, which we're about to recap. He'd been there for 10 seasons, so all 10 seasons of D's AFLW footy, 101 games, obviously the 2023 flag. But the reporting is, Johnny, that he is going to be joining Geelong. He lives down the highway on the Surf Coast, per this article. It's widely expected that by the Demons staff and players, according to the Herald Sun's Josh Barnes, that Stanier will end up at the Cats. Just, I guess, 60 seconds from you, where does that rate, you know, from 0 to 100 in terms of buzz, where is it for you?
At 100, absolutely. For what he's achieved with Melbourne, like a premiership, and then they missed finals the next year, and then back to a prelim to miss out on another grand final by 10 points. Yeah, I'm very excited. Like if this happens, this is the perfect stepping stone for the Cats, the perfect type of coach to bring in, because I feel like the Cats, we've got that base level of players like Melbourne that are really talented. We just need that development to show them how to play the modern AFLW game. And obviously, Mick Stanier, he knows the modern game. He's got the team to a prelim, to Melbourne to a prelim, and almost to a grand final. So, yeah, I'm very excited. If he is named as new coach, I think it's the perfect replacement for Dan. The base is there for a new coach to come in and set this team up for success.
I just had a quick little bit of math here while you were talking. Since 2021, which is when we started this podcast, to now, Mick Stanier had led the D's to a regular season record of 48 wins, 13 losses in the last 5 seasons or 6 seasons.
Yeah.
That's pretty insane. 48 and 13 in the last 6 seasons. Along with a flag, along with
100
prelim final appearances. Yeah, I'm with you. All right, so with that out the way, let's move on and talk AFLW recaps, Johnny. And hopefully we do get some Mick Stanier news in the near future that he is going to join the Cats. You know, hopefully we can get that confirmed. But the first game features Mick Stanier's Melbourne Demons. In the game of the weekend, one of the games of the finals, geez, Melbourne, you could make an argument they've been involved in the best game of finals each week of the finals. The opening week where they lost to Brisbane, the second week where they beat Adelaide, and this third week where unfortunately for them, they fell after a rousing start, Johnny. The D's got out the gates on fire. The gates of hell were opened, and they came out on fire. Paxi Paxman gold after 2 minutes. 2 minutes later, Riley Wotherspoon doubled the D's advantage. Kate Hoare kicked a goal after 12 minutes, and the D's had 3 goals on the board before North had added a major. The problem, Johnny, is that North responded in the second part of the first quarter with 3 goals of their own within 4 minutes. It was Blythe and Bogue, I don't know. Eilish Sheeran and then Bogue again, the Irish woman, 2 goals in the space of 4 minutes. Melbourne did get the final goal of the opening term, a booming kick to Taylor Harris, who had quite the first quarter. That put the D's up 4-2-26 to 3-1-19. But from there, Johnny, it really was all North Melbourne, to me anyway, and you might have other thoughts, but we entered the North Melbourne zone. They controlled the game with heavy pressure. They just failed to make the scoring tell, really. The second term, they kicked 1 goal 5 to Melbourne's 1 goal. That meant that Melbourne still had the lead 32-30 at the half. At 3-quarter time, this was the quarter maybe where Melbourne lost the game more than any other because they had 4 behinds to nothing. 3 of those behinds directly off the boot of a player. So they were up 36-30, and from there, North Melbourne rolled. They kept Melbourne with no scoring shots of any kind in the final term while adding, 6 of their own, kicking 2 goals for. They run out 6-10-46 to 5-6-36 winners. It was Bogue with her third. It was Jasmine Garner with the sealer. Johnny, they still haven't lost. They still haven't lost since 2023. North Melbourne win at 6-10-46 to 5-6-36. It's a heartbreaker for the D's, but this was part 1 of the cream rising to the top. How did you feel about this game?
This was another pretty exciting game. Again, I knew the score, but I was watching the hot replay. Yeah, that was a really fantastic game by both teams. I feel like they both had moments where they were on top and were in control. Melbourne early on, and then Melbourne sort of in that last quarter where they were sort of trying to get something going their way. But unfortunately, when you're up against North Melbourne, you've got to play absolute best from start to finish, which I think Melbourne just about did. I think Melbourne put their absolute best on the park. Their defence was pretty outstanding for the entire game. Their midfield fought really hard, looked fantastic for the entire game. Their pressure was, I think, like 244. Their inside 50 work, their attacking work was pretty good, but it just wasn't good enough. That was just that one area that, as you mentioned in the little blurb there, that there was just that failing chain in the link that just wasn't able to connect to get those goals. I think if they kicked maybe 1 or 2 more goals in that third quarter where they kicked the 4 behinds, that would have been it for North Melbourne. Melbourne could have had a great win. But as I said, when you play against North Melbourne, you've got to be at your best for the entire game. You've got to take your opportunities because boy, did we see North Melbourne just do North Melbourne things. This is what I've won, I think, 25, 26 games in a row now because they know when to apply the pressure. They know when to go. Their handball work in tight is outrageous. If it wasn't for North Melbourne, Melbourne's pressure, Melbourne would have been in the dust. But their pressure the relentlessness kept them in it. And you could really see that pick up for North Melbourne, their pressure when they got the lead. You just saw this new energy go surge through North Melbourne. And you're like, yeah, that's it. They're not giving up this lead. And obviously they didn't. North Melbourne, I don't know what else you can say except bloody hell, what a team. And as I said, when you get success, you get the fans going in. And I tell you what, that last quarter, that was some of the loudest crowds I've seen at a AFLW game. And the way they were going berserk was great to see. The passion, the excitement by everyone. And it wasn't just a crowd full of women, it was a crowd full of men and women and kids all having a fantastic time, enjoying it, cheering like it was an AFL end game, which is fantastic because this game was up there as good as an AFL end game. Well done to Melbourne. Heartbreaking, and well done to North Melbourne bringing such an exciting game. This is why AFLW is so good, because you get these games when there's two fantastic teams going at it for a place in the grand final. Obviously, Melbourne's going to be heartbreaking, but I think still what they've been able to achieve is still pretty fantastic, and they should hold their heads high. 10 points from a grand final, and North Melbourne just continue on doing what they're doing and looking pretty much invincible. Like, Brisbane's going to have to bring their absolute best if they want to have a chance. And as I said, North Melbourne's going to have a shocking game if they're going to lose this grand final.
Yeah, absolutely. North were incredible. You do run out of things to say about them, or at least you just end up saying the same things about them each week. And the reason for that is their consistency, Johnny. That's why we end up saying the same descriptives about them. Their tackling pressure, their clearance winning, their speed of ball movement, the cleanness of possession, the way they kick it in, all these different things, because they do it week in, week out. They've got 25 wins in a row. No AFL/VFL men's or women's team has ever done it. And some stats that stood out to me, Johnny, that sort of probably painted the difference. North went inside 50 40 times. They averaged 44 and a half entries inside 50 on the season. So in the ballpark of their season average. Melbourne averaged 40.3 inside 50s per game over the season. They only had 29 here. So that's a massive, massive difference. They've been held to, the best part of a dozen fewer inside 50s than what they normally get. And there was moments I was watching this with my wife and my dad, and I said, it's like there's a brick wall across the middle of the ground. Melbourne can get it out of defense to halfway, but once it's there, they just struggle to get it inside 50. North Melbourne, after that first quarter, or even after just, I suppose, the game's first 10 minutes, the change from North to lock Melbourne down. Melbourne looked incredible. The way Melbourne moved the ball early on was like, holy moly. And at one point,
really
too,
good.
I was thinking, what sort of score are we going to get? 26-19 at quarter time. Is this going to be sort of like a 90-85 kind of result? North just too good at clamping down, though. And the other ones that stood out were clearances. North averaged 26. They had 21. Melbourne averaged 14 and a half. 24 and a half. They had 14. So 10 fewer clearances. The best part of 12 fewer inside 50s. Their contested possessions were well down, 102. That's 25 lower than their season average. It's just little things like that, I think, that are the edge in games like this. And things like, too, like, I think North probably did a better job of, to some degree, shutting Kate Hoare out of the contest. Now, she still ends with 18 touches, 5 marks, 3 tackles, 3 clearances, and 2 goals won. And that's the quality of a player like Kate Hoare. But I think in previous games this final series, Johnny, Kate Hoare has been more involved for longer periods of the game. There were times where I feel like North were able to shut her out of the contest. And you've got players like Jazz Garner who just went ballistic.
Bang.
32 touches, 2 marks, 8 tackles, 7 clearances, and 1 goal. Yeah, what more can you say? They were absolutely immaculate and well deserving, Johnny. Ultimately, they deserved to go. They were the better team on the day.
It's one of those games that if Melbourne faced anyone else, they'll most likely win this game. They just came up against a team that don't know how to lose. You normally say teams don't know how to win, but North, they don't know how to lose. You can sense they refuse to lose. They go, we're not losing this. No matter how good you are, no matter how far ahead you get, you're not winning this game. We're going to win this game. And yeah, I guess it's just that sense of going, we're better than you. And then proving it every single week, week in, week out. Even when gets a really good Melbourne team with probably one of the better defensive games by a team I've seen by Melbourne. Like they were nigh on unstoppable, the Melbourne defence, but North Melbourne still found a way to get around that defence and kick that winning score. Yeah, they're freakishly good. And yeah, they rely on just Garner a lot, but I tell you what, they've still got a bunch of other players that can play just as well, and they rely on other players just as much. Like, yeah, they're just freakishly good. And unfortunately, Melbourne just weren't that freakishly good.
Yeah, and they I don't know. Can you remember? Did Shelley Heath go out with an injury, or I'm just trying to see. Anyway, my point
went
being,
down for a bit. And
I can't remember.
There
It's
was
been a few days, obviously, since I watched.
I think it might have been a hit with Paxman, Ethan Paxman.
Okay.
I think. Oh no,
I don't.
Yeah,
I can't see anything about. I was just. Well, that's sort of my point, and if I've missed over that she was injured or something, like my apologies. But I was just looking at her stat line, Johnny, and Heath was a player I had up there as one of the players of the game for Melbourne last week against the Crows. Last week, 24 touch. No injuries listed?
No.
Well, last week against the Crows, Heath had 24 touches, 5 marks, 8 tackles, 6 clearances, and a bunch of meters gained, and really broke things open. On the weekend, 6 touches, 9 tackles, no clearances, 1 kick. So, that was a major thing as well for me, because Shelley Heath had really sort of stood out as a player who was a bit of a line breaker for Melbourne. And as I said, apologies if we missed something and that wasn't a full game or whatever, and I just haven't realised. I should be able to tell just from the game time, actually. Let me just go back. I can tell you what time on ground that Shelley Heath had. Let me just get to it. 84% time on ground. They just put work into stopping her. I would guess, because she was a line breaker for them. All right, Johnny, that is all on that game. We've got to keep chuffing along, and that is into prelim final 2. Less to be said about this one, because the result, it was quite straightforward in the end, and I had bad vibes about this from the moment that the media team sort of baited Sophie McKay into a "we're coming for you" comment after Carlton whomped Hawthorn in the semi-final. And I think we all had the same feeling when we discussed it on the pod, that
you just,
like Brisbane, needed any more ammunition. And
it's the same as Kenny Hinkley doing the aeroplane. It's something, you don't give an opposition any more ammunition. And when you're a young team that's made prelim for the first time in a few years, don't give anything to the opposition, because this happens. This game happens. And
exactly.
I only watched a mini, but man, Brisbane just mauled them into dust. Like, I think the score is pretty soft on Carlton, because I think Brisbane could have easily had a 80 points to 20-point win if they really wanted to.
Yeah, for anyone who lived under a rock or just hadn't caught the game, Carlton actually opened with the game's first goal after 4 minutes 49 seconds. It was Dana Finn on the spot to put them up, but all the rest of the scoring in the quarter was done by Brisbane. They were just behinds. One to Orla O'Dwyer, one to Dakota Davidson, and one to Nessa Dooley. Nessa? Trying to read my old man eyes here. Nisa, it looks like, or Nessa. I don't know. Dooley kicked it behind.
Yeah, Nisa.
Thereafter, it was all over because Brisbane, they kicked 3 goals, 2. Now, Carlton, to their credit, actually kicked a couple of goals. Poppy Schultz twice in the second term to cancel out goals from Ruby Spark, twice for Spark, and 1 goal to Taylor Smith. So the halftime lead for the Lions was actually just 3-5-23 to 18. But the scoring shots told a story, Johnny, 8-3. Carlton were absolutely living on the edge, gripping by their fingernails. And then it all came undone in the third term. A run of 5, I believe it was, unanswered goals. Ruby Spark, Courtney Hodder, Dakota Davidson, Ellie Hampson, and Dakota Davidson again, opening up a gaping chasm of a lead for Brisbane. There was a response with a goal to Sophie McKay, but that too was cancelled out with a goal to Ellie Hampson to leave Brisbane up 36 points entering the final term. They won. They did win the final term. No, they lost the final term. Brisbane 1 goal, 1 to 1 goal 2. But it was cue in the rack stuff by that point. Brisbane were far too good. Johnny, you said it. The margin was probably flattering. They were plus 80 in disposals. They were plus 22 inside 50s, 50 to 28. They were more efficient, 63% to 58. More efficient inside 50. They won more clearances. They had more contested possession. They were plus 70 in uncontested ball. Johnny, the Blues had 96 uncontested possessions. Their season average is 134. The Blues were down 10 marks on their yearly average. Their tackling was down. That's it in a nutshell. Brisbane were the far better team. We finally found, Johnny, Carlton hit their head on their ceiling for 2025. And I mean, you can't be too disheartened, can you, as a Carlton fan? Like,
no,
from where they were last year to this year, the ceiling being we got whacked in a prelim final on the road. Like, it's a pretty good year for Carlton.
Yeah, you got whacked by the runner-up from last year in a prelim. So, yeah, it's recency bias says it's a absolutely disappointing, frustrating, and what was the point going out of this game feeling probably for Carlton supporters. But on a whole, it is a win of a season to get to a prelim, and you can tell Joe just not ready for it. But they were nowhere near the level of the next 3 sides. Like if it was Melbourne, if it was North Melbourne facing against the Blues, the same result would have happened. Like they just didn't have that same pressure, the same idea of what it takes to play play finals, like a big final. But you need that experience. They got that experience big time, and they can take that into next year and probably be better. They will be better for it, and you can only get better through experience and loss. As they say, losing is the best teacher there is. You can't learn better than losing, and losing this way in such a harsh way in a hostile environment. You're going to take a lot away from this game. They're going to take a lot away from this game, and they can only get better from here out. So, yes, it's disappointing, but on the flip side, it's probably better for the future that they get a loss. They get a whack like this now, rather than later on when a better side more developed. So now they know what it's going to take when they come against Brisbane, North Melbourne, or Melbourne again.
Yeah, I just thought there were moments in this game where you could see the difference between a side that's been to the finals a bunch, that understands the
Yeah.
pace, the speed, the intensity of the game, and a team that was just doing it for the first time. Carlton looked a little bit like they were running in mud at different times. Their structure fell apart. Their ball use really wasn't as good. Like, it's a team that, we've said so often, they just hit their targets at speed so well, and they break, and they did break. They broke down really, on Saturday night, and it's one of those things. It's an incredible atmosphere up there for Brisbane. They had a great crowd in, and you could just feel once they got on a roll, there was absolutely nothing stopping them, least of all Carlton. And I don't know, Johnny, like I've seen, and again, we won't talk the specifics of, the bookmaking part of this, because we don't really like talking about that stuff too much on the show. But Brisbane are already, I'll say this, extremely heavy underdogs. Extremely heavy. Not quite to the levels that Melbourne were in the prelim final against North, but this is the way that the odds are set up is essentially what you might see from a mid-season of like first playing like 12th on the ladder, first playing like 14th on the ladder. And I don't know, Johnny, this Brisbane team looked very scary to me, the way they were playing by the end of this game. I don't know about you, but they were pretty remarkable.
Yeah, they were, as I said, I only watched a mini, so I didn't get the whole scope of what they were like. But yeah, I think to beat a team like that, and that easily, they would have played extremely well. And they're going to have to bring that level of intensity, that level of pressure, that level of movement, cleanliness, and decisiveness to the grand final if they want to have a chance against North Melbourne.
Yeah.
Because North Melbourne's not going to change the way they play. They're going to just adapt and go play the game that they need to play against each opposition. And as I said, it's going to take North Melbourne not playing at their best for Brisbane to win, I reckon. But Brisbane's also got to play at their best for 4 full quarters. You can't have one bad quarter against North Melbourne, because that will be game over.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, the things that stood out to me, I guess, with Brisbane were just that the pressuring mentality, the physicality. They really did at times bully Carlton. Their aggressiveness with how they moved the ball, how they ran with the ball. Very exciting team to watch. I mean, I'm not a big Brisbane fan, but more from a subjective bias point of view. Obviously the Cats and Brisbane have had their recent history. But from an objective point of view and looking at the way they play, it is an exciting brand of footy. So, yes, that leads us to the last part of the week. Johnny, do you have a nomination for your player of the week? I've got 2 players in mind, and it's Jazz Garner and Ruby Svark. We talked about Jazz Garner before. Svark for the Lions kicked 4 goals, had 5 tackles and a goal assist, and I thought was a real fire starter for them. Jazz Garner we talked about, but is there anyone else on your list, or would you?
No, mine was just going to be Jazz Garner, basically.
All right. Well, let's honor both of them. You have Jazz Garner. I'll say Ruby Svark. They are our joint players of the week. Garner with like 30 odd touches, a bunch of clearances, a bunch of tackles, a goal. And as I said, Svark, 4 goals straight and 5 tackles for the Lions was very, very impressive.
Garner. Where do you start with her? Absolute freakish player she is. Heart and soul, leader of the North Melbourne Football Club, and you can see why she's the leader and why she is such a integral part of this team, and why she is probably the best AFLW player in the league at the moment, with Kate Horn probably not too far behind her. And it was a battle of those 2 players. Unfortunately, Kate Horn got that shoulder injury, so wasn't at her absolute peak of her powers and got held out well by North Melbourne. But Jazz Garner was just on another level. Like, she didn't really start super hot or super well, but I tell you, she just built into this game until she was just absolutely everywhere. And in that goal, just a quick tap out and then a slammed on the boot. Man, she knows how to play this game well. She knows how to lead this team to another grand final. I'm pretty sure she's the captain. If she isn't the captain, she still leads this team. Yeah, I thought so. But yeah, she's just one of those players that drags everyone in around her and makes them play better alongside her. And you can tell they play as a team, but she is the one that's out in front going, follow me and we'll win. And she does it every single week. Yeah. She is absolutely freakish.
Yeah, you look at her season this year, she's averaging 27.5 touches. That's career high. She's averaging 6.5 tackles. That's the third highest number in a season for her career. She's averaging 5.2 clearances, and she's averaging a goal and a half per game. She's kicked 20 goals this season, Johnny. So yeah, total freak. It's not hyperbole to say that she is probably the best player currently playing in the AFLW. So that'll do for us here on the public show. It's over to Patreon now. We're going to talk about the AFLW Grand Final. We're going to give our thoughts on Geelong's 2025 men's draft class, including very exciting players like Harley Barker, Hunter Holmes, Jesse Malor, amongst others. So yeah, if you want to get on to the extra stuff, make sure you go on over to the Hoops Crew Patreon and sign up. The footy might be almost over, but we are churning away episodes and extended episodes over there on Patreon. Start a free trial. All right. Thanks, Johnny, for being here. Thank you to the listener and the viewer and the subscriber for your support. Until next Tuesday night, go Cats!
Go Cats!